Hey, what's up everybody? My name's Paul Fadika, and today's video is going to be your complete one-stop shop guide to the upcoming Polkadot Parachain Auctions, which will be starting November 11th. Long story short, if you're a DOT holder, DOT being the native token of Polkadot, what you're gonna do is you take your DOT, you pick a project that you like that is trying to launch on Polkadot, you lock that DOT with that project in a crowd loan for a year or two, and in exchange you receive some of that project's native tokens back, and then eventually you get your DOT back after 2 years. So it's basically a way of getting that project's native token, the new launching project, you're getting in on the ground floor, get their new native tokens basically for free. It's not really for free because the DOT that you're locking for a year or two has real economic value, right? You're missing out on the opportunity cost of locking your DOT for a year. And also, by the time you get the DOT back, it could be completely worthless. So a word of caution is the entire crypto market right now is in a giant speculative bubble. So Polkadot, if you look at it today, its market cap is at about $41.5 billion. Would you guys really pay $40 billion for a company that hasn't really even launched a product yet? That's kind of insane if you ask me. But if there's one thing that I've learned for the past year, looking at like GameStop and Tesla stock price, is no matter how ridiculously overpriced an asset is, it can always still double. Because I mean, look at Ethereum, right? Like Ethereum, it has a $400 billion market cap, and just a year ago it was at like 40 billion, and now it's 400 billion. So the sky's the limit when it comes to these crazy ass crypto prices. The Polkadot could be 40 billion today, 400 billion a year from now, or it could be zero. Who knows? Just don't play with any more money than you are comfortable losing, okay? That's my biggest advice for you guys going forward. Okay, before we get into the parachain auctions, I want to rewind a minute, get back, and explain to you what a blockchain is first. So a blockchain is essentially just a distributed database that is stored across multiple computers and is publicly accessible and writable. And it can store things like account balances, it can store records like an IP address, location, or it could store arbitrary code to be executed like smart contracts, right? So this is a block right here. That's our block, and we want to update it, right? We want to exchange some money, -3 +3, then we want to change a record. So these are called transactions. We submit these transactions to what is known as a validator. Now these validators, they're a crowd of machines that are running, and they store the current state of the blockchain and they accept transactions, right? So they have the state stored, and they take a new transaction, they process it, and then they use that to produce a new block. So running these validators incurs like a real economic cost, right? These are servers, they use up bandwidth, they use up compute power, right? So they need to be paid for. And that's why every blockchain has a native currency. So on Ethereum, it's ETH, right? And ETH is the currency that you use to pay in order to post new transactions to the Ethereum blockchain, right? So there's two ways in which validators are rewarded for processing transactions and storing the block state. The first is transaction fees, and the second is inflation. So the native currency, in this case Ethereum, is constantly being inflated with every block that is produced, and that's given to the validators as block rewards, which is why they can continue to operate those machines. Now, in the case of Ethereum, Ethereum has 13-second block times, and each block that is posted is about 80 kilobytes in size. So the problem is, so what happens if more people want to write to the Ethereum blockchain than the Ethereum blockchain can handle in each one of these 13-second updates? Well, they have an auction where people trying to post transactions to the Ethereum blockchain compete with each other. So that's why Ethereum is so expensive to write to, is because they're all competing for each other, trying to win a spot in that next block. And Ethereum gets very expensive because of that. It can cost you $20 just to change a simple record on Ethereum. So that's where Polkadot comes in. Suppose we could change this whole system and we could have multiple blocks all running next to each other in parallel, not interfering with each other. That would allow us to scale this blockchain to allow way more throughput in terms of transactions. So Polkadot starts out with one main blockchain called the relay chain. Now the relay chain gets a new block produced every 6 seconds, and each one of these blocks can be up to 3.75 megabytes large. So it has a lot more throughput already than Ethereum 1.0 has. And the relay chain has its own set of validators. And the relay chain has its own set of validators that are in charge of processing transactions and storing the state of the blockchain. However, the relay chain doesn't process any smart contracts or it doesn't execute any programs that you can upload to it. It can't run any dApps. So if you want to run a distributed application called a dApp, you have to launch what is called a parachain. So if you want to launch any smart contracts, you have to launch them on what is called a parachain. And a parachain is its own blockchain that is being updated. And each parachain has its own set of validators called collators. And these collators are in charge of storing the state of that blockchain and updating transactions. Now, this main relay chain can support up to 100 parachains all connected to it. So it can't have an infinite supply, but it can have a lot of parallel parachains operating all at the same time. So the way this works is somebody posts transactions to a parachain, right? The collator will take the current state of the relay chain, it'll take the transactions, it'll take the current state of the parachain, it'll combine them all together to make a new block that it proposes to the validators. Then if the validators approve that block, they will include it in the next relay chain block right here, and then it can be posted over here to the parachain block. So this whole process takes a while, which is why parachains update every 12 seconds, whereas the relay chain itself updates every 6 seconds. So if you have a really large document and you want to know if that document's changed or not, what you do is you take that document, put it through a hash function, which produces a small string called a hash. That hash is stored on the relay chain, right? So if you took that original document and modified it, that is not, and then run it through that process again, comparing it through to the original hash, that hash is not going to match anymore. So you're going to know that the data stayed the same. So the relay chain doesn't store any state of the parachains. All it stores is a hash of each one of the parachain's blocks to make sure that that parachain block has not been altered or modified. So that's how the relay chain provides security to each one of the parachains that it's supporting. So that's where this whole parachain auction concept comes from. You know, first of all, there's not an unlimited number of parachains available, so they have to be allocated to the more promising projects. And second of all, each one of the parachains is using up economic resources of the validators by constantly messaging the validators back and forth in order to produce blocks, right? So those validators are being paid in DOT, the native token of the relay chain. They're being paid in DOT, so it makes sense that the parachain would have to pay some DOT to the relay chain itself in exchange for using its validators for security. But also, in my opinion, the projects that are launching their own parachains are getting a pretty shitty deal here. All right, so think about it for a second. First of all, they have their own native currency that they're launching on their own little blockchain, right? And they want to keep their currency. They don't want to give this currency away. But in order to get a spot on the relay chain to exist, they have to give away a bunch of their currency to incentivize people to loan them the DOT so they can be on the relay chain. And then they also have to inflate their currency to pay their own set of validators, their collators. They have to pay the collators, right? So it's costing them a lot on both ends. What would be a lot more fair, in my opinion, is if for the parachain projects, if they could take that locked DOT, right, and they could earn interest on it, you know, 8% per year. They could take the DOT that they're earning in interest, sell the DOT, get cash, use that to fund development projects on their own. That would make the entire project more self-funding, and it'd be great if the validators, if they didn't need to build their own collator network, if instead they could just use the relay chain's validators to store their own state and to keep updating their own transactions. That would make it a lot more turnkey. They wouldn't have to build their own collator network and be inflating their currency to pay the collators, right? I feel like the parachains are getting a really raw deal here, right? Because first of all, they're not in charge of their own destiny, right? They have to convince other people to support them in order to simply exist. They get a lease, right? They got to repeat this entire auction process every year or two. It's not permanent. They don't keep their spot forever. 3, it's expensive. And 4, if the relay chain goes down, they can't produce new blocks. Parachains cannot produce new blocks without the relay chain. So if the relay chain, if the validator set goes down, it doesn't matter how great of a collator set that parachain has, that parachain will not be able to operate at all. So there's a single central point of failure. And in my opinion, it's a pretty raw deal for parachains. The next problem is that the relay chain is only being updated every 6 seconds and the parachains are every 12 seconds, right? So that's faster than Ethereum, and this whole system is already better than Ethereum 2.0 will be whenever Ethereum 2.0 gets around to launching. But it's already actually outdated. So Polkadot hasn't even launched yet, and it's already technically outdated, right? You've got Avalanche and Phantom, which are doing 1 to 2 second block times. You've got Solana, which is doing 400 millisecond block times, right? So Polkadot is actually pretty slow compared to a lot of the blockchains that already exist. All right, well, if I haven't scared you off yet, that's enough theory for today. Let's get into actually working on Polkadot. So I'm gonna go to Coinbase Pro first. Side note, if you're using Coinbase Vanilla, stop using Coinbase Vanilla. Like, why the fuck are you using Coinbase Vanilla? Coinbase is charging 1.5% per transaction. If you have a Coinbase account, you have a Coinbase Pro account. Just type in pro.coinbase.com. That's all you gotta do. And then you get this way cooler dark mode interface, and you get fees that are 0.5% instead of 1.5%, okay? So I'll show you real quick. So we're gonna buy some DOT right here. That's the native token of the Polkadot Parachain, of the Polkadot relay chain, right? So I'm gonna buy $100 worth of DOT. I'm gonna get 2.3 DOT, and I'm gonna pay a fee of 50 cents. All right, so let's do that. All right, cool. So one side note, if you're in the state of New York, New York will not let you buy DOT. I don't know why. Why does the government do anything? Why is marijuana illegal in half the country still? Like, I don't know. The government doesn't need a reason to do stupid shit. It just does stupid shit, okay? So if you're in New York, you can't buy DOT, I'm sorry. All right, cool, so we've got DOT in our wallet. Now, what's going on right here is that Coinbase owns the DOT for us, right? Coinbase just has, it's like a bank. They've got like tons of crypto just sitting with other people's names in it, right? So we want to take custody of our DOT. We want to, it's like withdrawing money from the bank, okay? But first we need a place to be able to store our DOT, right? We need to create an account. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna install the Polkadot.js extension, all right? So we're just gonna add that. So this is a browser extension that we're going to be using a lot. Then you're gonna go through the whole setting up process. You're gonna create a new account. Now, every account has what is called a seed phrase. These 12 words are the seed phrase for the account. So I'm gonna take these 12 words and I'm going to store them safely, because what you need to do is, if you ever lose your account, if you need to recover it, you're going to need these 12 keywords. And anybody with these 12 keywords can recover your account and steal all your money that you have stored in that account. So it's very important that you keep this secret. So the best way to do this is to create a Word document, put it in here, and then encrypt this Word document, right? You just go over to, go to File, Info, Protect Document, encrypt with password, right? And you can put a super secret password like ABC123, right? 123. Right? Now this document is now encrypted, right? So even if somebody gains access to my laptop or gains access to my file system or hacks my computer somehow, they still won't be able to read my secret phrase in here without knowing my password, right? And put that document inside of like a Google Drive or a Dropbox so that if your computer gets destroyed, you'll still have a backup of it somewhere, because you're gonna want that someday. Trust me, you're gonna want that. Don't skip this step. So you can see up here I have the Polkadot.js browser extension installed, and I have 2 accounts, a controller and a stash. The difference between the two, that's beyond the scope of this video, right? But the important part is, look right here. I've got this account right here. That's my account number. Okay, we're gonna remember that. Now let's go on to polkadot.js.org, right? Click over here. Okay, so this is the official Polkadot website, and it's pretty freaking ugly, I'm not gonna lie. But to be fair, that this is more intended for like crypto nerds like us to go on the back end and do administrative sort of tasks. It's not really intended to be a front-facing mass consumer app. So that's why it's pretty ugly and clunky, okay? So you're gonna click up here on the top left, and this lets you select which network you wanna connect to, okay? So there's Kusama with all its parachains, which we're gonna get into in a little bit. We'll get there. And then there's Polkadot right here, which has no parachains yet. And then you can connect to it using different methods, right? Each of these is a different way of connecting to the Polkadot Parachains. So this is not a regular website. This is an IPFS website, Interplanetary File System website. So all the files that are stored here are distributed across the world, across this big network. So there's no central point of failure that could take down this website. Okay, all right, now before we get started, I want to explain like one more thing. All right, so we're going to go back to the Network Explorer and we can go to Kusama and its parachains. So Kusama is basically the testnet of Polkadot. So most testnets, when you connect to them, the assets traded on them have no real economic value, right? Like if you connect to the Ethereum testnet, you can get as much ETH as you want. There's just a button you push and it just gives you as much ETH as you want. So it inflates the currency of Ethereum infinitely, right? So nobody's gonna pay real world money for something that could be infinitely reproduced. On Kusama, on the other hand, all of its assets have real world value. And the reason why they decided to have a testnet with real world value is basically to create a giant bug bounty. So each one of the parachains that launches on Kusama copies that same like bug bounty model basically. So here's Polkadot over here. They launch on Kusama first, right, with real economic value. So if there's millions of dollars stored right here and there's some sort of security vulnerability and a hacker could break that security and steal the $1 million, realistically the hacker's gonna do that. So basically they just go out here, test their stuff with your money and see if any of your money gets stolen. And if none of your money got stolen after a couple months, that contract is probably pretty secure. So then they feel safe enough to take that contract and then deploy it over on Polkadot, the Polkadot mainnet, knowing that it hasn't been hacked yet, at least. So just be aware that when you're on the Kusama network, things are a little more experimental. But overall, I like Kusama better than Polkadot, simply because Kusama is just like less expensive to do everything, and it's just a little more fun, a little more experimental, but it's also a little more risky. So anyway, we're connected to the Polkadot. So we're connected to the relay chain, which is the main chain of Polkadot, right? And we can see block production going on right here. There's a new block being produced every 6 seconds, just like we were talking about. And you can get a bunch of nerdy info we don't really need. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna go up here to accounts, click on accounts. We're gonna see our accounts right here. Click on this. Okay, so you can see right here, here's my account on the relay chain. Now, if you notice this number right here, this account identifier is different from my account identifier overall. So let me explain that for a second. Remember that phrase that we saved? Okay, so that phrase is the seed phrase. So that seed phrase is used to generate what is called a public key and a private key, right? The public key is like your username and the private key is more like your password, right? Now, for each network that you connect to, you will be given a new public key. So on the Polkadot relay chain, on the Kusama relay chain, on each one of the parachains, you will all have a different ID on each one of those. However, they're all the same ID. They're all just the same public address expressed in a different format, so don't be confused. When you're withdrawing money from Coinbase, you can use this address right here, my relay chain address, or I could use my overall network address. So I'm gonna use my overall network address right here. Go back to Coinbase, gonna push withdraw. Right, I'm going to withdraw DOT to a crypto address, right? I'm going to use my address right there. Now the minimum amount to withdraw is 1.03 DOT, right? You can't withdraw less than that. So we're going to withdraw. We hit withdraw. Then we go back to our Polkadot Explorer. Now remember that the relay chain has 6-second block times, so our balance should go up from 11 to 12 in about 6 seconds, because that's how long it takes to produce a new block. All right, so there we go. We've got our extra DOT now. I want to mention one extra thing before we get started here. Polkadot has what is called an existential deposit. So what that means is by having an account on Polkadot, you are using up its storage space and its compute power, right? So they want you to maintain a minimum balance of at least 1 DOT, which is equal to about 40 bucks right now. You always have to maintain a balance of at least 1 DOT in your account. Otherwise, your account will be wiped and all your balances will be harvested, you know, which in my opinion is a pretty big ripoff. That's one of the other things that is not that user-friendly with Polkadot. The address thing is not very user-friendly either, because like if you go on MetaMask, right, you go on MetaMask and you connect to different Ethereum networks, right? You connect to the Ethereum mainnet, you can connect to Binance Smart Chain, Phantom, Avalanche, whatever. You keep the same address no matter which address you're on, whereas on Polkadot, you get a different address for every parachain network that you're on. So that's not very user-friendly. The minimum account balance, it's not very user-friendly either. And on Kusama, actually, the minimum account balance is only like a penny, but on Polkadot, it's $40. So I don't know, not too happy about that. All right, so there you go. We've got our own wallet. We've got our own money in our wallet. We're on the website. We're ready to start the whole Crowdloan thing. So let's begin the more interesting part of this video, which is the Polkadot World Tour. So I created this spreadsheet to keep track of all the different projects that launched on Kusama so far. So Kusama had its own parachain auctions back in June. And we're gonna go through each of the projects that won a spot on Kusama. So for each one of these parachains, what they do is they launch on Kusama with one name, and then they launch their actual live version on Polkadot with a different name. So the first project that won a slot on Kusama was Karura. Now Karura, their name on Polkadot is Acala. For each one of these projects, there's two names to keep in mind, so it gets pretty confusing. I'm not gonna be honest. I kind of wish they just used the same name on both networks, which would have made my life a lot easier, but they didn't. So I'm sorry if this is a little confusing, okay? So this parachain's name is Acala on Polkadot, and it's Karura on Kusama. Okay, so let's explore it. But first, before we do that, let's explore the Kusama Crowdloans, how those went. All right, so I'm gonna connect to the Kusama relay chain, then I'm gonna go up here to network, go to Parachains. I'm going to go over to Crowdloan. Now you can see right here, here's the list of currently ongoing Crowdloans, right? We've got 5 projects all competing for the number 12 spot, and then we've got 11 completed Crowdloans that have been going on since June. Now you can see here, here's Karura, which was the number 1, which won the first parachain slot, right? You can see, here's my contribution. I contributed 0.2 KSM to this. There was a total of 14,000 people who contributed, and they raised a mind-blowing 500,000 KSM. So KSM is like $400 each, so that's about like $200 million in KSM that they had loaned to them to secure this spot. You also notice that there's a cap right next to the amount raised. So these projects can put a maximum amount that they want to raise. So for example, that maximum amount was hit by KILT. So their maximum amount was 220,000. So I missed out on that crowd loan for that project because they hit their cap too fast. And I didn't realize it until it was too late. So they hit their 220,000 cap. Kintsugi hit their $200,000 cap. Basilisk hit their $200,000 cap. So going back to when we were talking about how parachains work, remember that in order to have money loaned to them for the crowd loan, each one of these projects has to give people some of their native token, some of their native currency, right? And they don't want to give that away. So the less money they raise in order to win a spot, the better, right? This isn't Kickstarter where they're trying to raise, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million for 10 million. More is not better, right? They want to raise as little KSM or as little DOT as possible while still also winning the spot. So that incentivizes them to cap the maximum amount that they can raise. And there's millions of people trading Bitcoin right now. And think about this, there's millions of people trading Bitcoin right now, but there's only about 11,000 people, 16,000 people who got in on each of these crowd loans. So simply by viewing this screen, you're already way ahead of the game of everyone else, right? They don't even know that these things exist or they're happening yet. They're not watching this YouTube video. You guys are watching this YouTube video because you guys are smart. So around November 9th or 10th, like right before these auctions start, be sure to keep checking this page, seeing if the crowd loans open early, because the earlier you can get in on the crowd loan, the better. Because 1, you won't have to worry about like it already being capped out, and 2, they usually have, each of these projects usually has some sort of like early bird incentive where if you get in first, you get some extra 10% bonus token amount, okay? So you can see for Karura, I contributed about 0.2 KSM, which is about $80 right here, okay? So I'm gonna show you guys what Karura looks like. So this is Karura, which is a DApp, a distributed application. So it's running on a blockchain. It's not running on any central like server necessarily. So you can go up here and you can see that I have about $154 in my portfolio right now. Here's the CAR. This is the native token of Karura, CAR, which I got in exchange for the KSM that I lent. And this is worth about 33 bucks right now, okay? So if you remember, I loaned them $80, which I'm going to get back in a year, and in exchange I got about $33 in their native token, right? Which could go up a lot in value, could collapse in value, who knows? So for all these projects, usually what they do is they make your native tokens that you earn have a subject to a vesting schedule. So I have about 1 car right now, but there's another 2.9 car that is vesting over the next year. Now you can go to collectibles, you can see that I got this pretty cool NFT for being part of their crowd loan. And you can go to cross-chain over here. So they have a bridge that allows you to transfer assets from the Kusama relay chain to different parachains, including the Karura relay chain, right? And there's also a bridge to Bitcoin and Ethereum, which we're not gonna explore right now. So we're gonna transfer some KSM right now from my account on Kusama relay chain to Karura main chain, right? Pick my controller account. I have 0.6 KSM. I'm gonna put in, let's just put in a small amount, 0.05, right? I'm gonna transfer it. And when you are interacting with a blockchain application, this is where your wallet comes in handy, right? So your wallet up here as a browser extension, this website communicates with you through this wallet, right? So I'm gonna enter my password. I'm gonna sign this transaction right up here. And there we go, the amount was transferred now. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you on Karura is minting synthetic assets. Okay, so a synthetic asset is, what you do is you lock money inside of a vault. I should say you lock crypto inside of a vault, and then you create a new token that is meant to track the price movements of another real world asset. And in this case, what we're going to be tracking is the US dollar, right? So they have a stable coin on here called KUSD, right? So I'm going to mint KUSD. Okay, I have a vault right here. And inside of this vault, I have already locked 0.11 KSM, which is about 40 bucks, right? So I can borrow against this stored balance right here to mint what is called KUSD. So I'm going to mint 20 KUSD right here. My browser extension is going to pop up asking me for permission for me to sign this transaction. So I say yes. Now keep in mind, parachains have about 12-second block times, so each one of these transactions we're going to do is going to take about 12 seconds to go through. So the way these synthetic assets work is that I have $40 locked in KSM, and I can use that to mint $20 of a new stable coin, right? And so if the price of KSM were to fall below a certain level, the liquidation rate, which is 290, right? The current price is about 380. If it falls below 290, then all of the money in my vault will basically be taken by the blockchain and then sold in order to pay back the loan, essentially, that I've used to create the $20. So I still get to keep those $20, but my $40 in KSM is at risk. And the $40 versus $20, that's called the collateral ratio. So you can see over here, I have about a 213% collateral ratio. So I'm pretty safe right now unless the price of Kusama collapses in the next however long I hold this position. Then I can go in here and I can swap. If you've ever used Uniswap v2, which is beyond the scope of this video, right? If you've ever used Uniswap v2, you can just go in here and you can swap one token for another token. So we could swap let's do that actually. Let's swap KSM to car. I just want like one more car. KAR. Okay, let's swap that. Sounds good. So this is called a DEX, a distributed exchange. So it's kind of like Coinbase, but it's stored on the cloud, and it's kind of beyond the scope of this video. We're not going to get into that right now. But the next thing I want to talk about is liquid staking. So let's talk about staking. How does staking work? We're going to go back to Polkadot. Let's go up to Polkadot. Over here, Polkadot, connect to the main chain. We're going to go up to network, and we're going to go to staking. Now staking, it's beyond the scope of this video right now, but basically you have 297 validators that are all running the Polkadot network right now. You have 600 validators that are waiting to hop on in, and you have 17,000 people that are staking with these validators. But basically what you do when you stake is you loan your money subject to a lockup period of 30 days to a validator, and the validator uses that money in order to operate and post transactions to the Polkadot network, right? And in exchange, the validator gets like 8% inflation, You can see the current rate is what, 8.2%. They get 8.2% inflation. They take that money, they take a fee out of it, and then they give that back to you. So that's basically staking. The problem with staking is that on Polkadot is that it's subject to a 30-day lockup period, and you need at least 120 DOT right now in order to create a stake account, which is like $4,800. So unless you have $4,800, it's too expensive to stake right now on Polkadot. You can also see over here that only that 57% of the DOT in circulation is currently staked. So that means that all the people currently staked will not be participating in the Polkadot Parachain auctions either. So that brings me back to liquid staking. So the concept of liquid staking is right over here. Let me explain it in a chart. It'll be better to explain in a chart. So you have your KSM or DOT locked inside of a Crowdloan for a year, or it's staking for subject to a 30-day unlocking period, right? But you don't want to wait a year, or you don't want to wait 30 days for that to unlock, right? So what they can do is they will take your locked KSM or locked DOT, and they will mint a liquid KSM L DOT or liquid DOT, and then that is a new token that represents ownership of the locked DOT. So then you can take that liquid DOT and then exchange it for actual KSM or actual DOT. So it's a way of being able to access your tokens and get liquidity faster, and that's subject to a fee because nobody's going to want to wait a year if they don't have to. So that's how liquid staking and liquid crowdloan things work. It's just a financial derivative, right? So I would go here and I would mint LKSM from my locked KSM, right? And then I could take my LKSM and I could swap it right here. I could swap LKSM for KSM, and then I would be able to just move that around and do whatever I want with it. So it's a way of people getting early access to their tokens in exchange for a fee. There's some other features on here like governance and earning and stuff, but that's beyond the scope of this current video. Now we might want to also check out Acala if you want. You can see it's basically just like Karura, except it's currently in a testnet. So it's a testnet, so none of the tokens have any real value, right? But it's got the same ideas about swapping and creating and minting stable coins, which the SEC is absolutely going to hate synthetic assets, right? They absolutely hate it. So there's a lot here actually on the Polkadot network for the SEC to hate right now. More generally, let's talk about the economic return on loaning to Karura and Acala. So if you loaned one KSM, which is about $400, right, to Karura, you got about 20 CAR back, which is equal to about 160 bucks or so right now. So that's a pretty good return, but not nearly as good as Moonriver's is. So we're going to talk about Moonriver next. But first, more generally, Karura, this is just one application running on the Karura parachain, right? So Karura is actually a complete EVM compatible chain. So EVM is Ethereum Virtual Machine, right? So Ethereum Virtual Machine, it's a compute environment that developers can deploy contracts to, and it's the one that runs Ethereum, obviously. Any application that's currently deployed to Ethereum could be deployed to Karura with almost no extra effort on the part of the development team. So in the future, you could see a bunch of other distributed applications, dApps, popping up. But instead of paying with Ethereum, you'd be paying with CAR, which is the native token, or there's an additional feature with Karura has, which is bring your own gas. So you could pay for transactions fees in KSM or some other token. You don't necessarily need to use their native CAR token. That all brings me to the next network, which was the #2 parachain, and probably the most hyped project on Kusama, and also the most successful from terms of number of users using the network and the value of its native token. Okay, so if you locked one KSM in the Moonriver Crowdloan, you would have gotten 14 mover tokens, which are worth about 3,900 bucks right now. So that's a 10x return on your money. I mean, that's kind of insane. So let's talk about Moonriver. So Moonriver is, so here we're on Moonriver's, little utility thing. You can see I have 2.9 mover tokens as my reward. I have 1.6 that I've claimed, and I have some more that are vesting that I can claim later. So Moonriver, it's fully it's fully MetaMask compatible. It's another EVM chain, right? It's a complete clone of Ethereum on Polkadot. So you can go over here, you can see that, you know, MetaMask can connect to a bunch of different chains. I'm currently connected to the Moonriver chain. You can see my assets right here. And just like you can deploy any application to Ethereum, you can deploy any application, any Solidity application to Moonriver. All right, so here's one popular application, which is Solar Beam. So it's just like a Uniswap clone. So I could exchange maybe some Moonriver for some Solar. Let's try that right now. I just want one, I want one more Solar, okay? So I can just swap it, confirm swap, right? And then I sign the MetaMask transaction, and you can see over here the price is gonna be, what is that? So the price for the transaction is gonna be around 11 cents, which if this was on Ethereum, this would be more like $20 for this transaction, because Ethereum is very overloaded right now and is very expensive. So again, this parachain has 12-second block time, so this transaction is going to take about like 12 seconds to go through. So there we go, our transaction went through, and we can go check my MetaMask balance. You can see assets, you can see I got my extra Solar in exchange for my Mover token, right? So this is a complete clone of Ethereum. So that's why people are so excited about it. And so Moonriver is going to be called Moonbeam when it launches on Polkadot. So in order to participate in the crowd loan, you have to register prior to it. So I'd recommend doing that right now if you can. The only downside of it is that the Moonbeam Foundation, the creators of this parachain, they're restricting people from the United States for participating. And I don't really like the United States being lumped in with people from Iran and North Korea, right? Restricting people based on their geographic location from participating in crypto, that's the entire thing crypto was created to stop, right? Crypto was made to create no borders, to allow people to freely exchange without interference through governments and physical borders and stuff. So this restriction is very much not in the spirit of crypto. And honestly, I'm kind of sick of this, because I'm kind of sick of these like little development teams or these companies like Binance trying to like hide behind moving their headquarters around to different locations. They're like oh, the SEC can't get me. I'm in the Cayman Islands. I'm over here. I'm a non-US entity hiding over here. Fuck you guys in the US. Fuck you guys. We can't just run and hide from the SEC. You know, as a community, we need to stand up to the SEC, to stand up to Gary Gensler, and just stand up for your own financial freedom and from having privacy from the government stopping you from doing things like this. But fortunately, all they're doing is they're just blocking IP addresses. So all you really got to do is just get a VPN, go and register for the Moonbeam crowd loan over the VPN, and you're good to go, right? This is definitely not a crowd loan that you want to sleep on. So next up, let's check out parachain number 3, which is the Acala network. So Acala is essentially a peer-to-peer compute cloud, right? Like if you want to have something computed, like there's Amazon AWS, right? AWS is sitting up there with a bunch of clouds. You just upload your data up there. Let's suppose you want to get a machine learning model compiled based on a data set you have, right? Like you take your data set, you upload it to AWS, AWS runs the program, gives you back the results. Acala allows that to be done in a peer-to-peer fashion. So you as a person with a computer can offer yourself up to this network to offer your compute power and your memory to be used to offer your compute power and memory to be used on the Acala network. And in exchange, you receive KFA tokens. And anybody who wants to have something computed on this peer-to-peer cloud network will have to pay in KFA tokens. So those KFA tokens have real economic value. You can see right here, I have about $100 in KFA tokens from contributing to the crowd loan. So the problem with peer-to-peer compute environments is if you're uploading your data set in my previous example for the machine learning model, you want to keep that private. Like, right, if it's going peer-to-peer to all these random people, you don't know who's getting a hold of your data set. Somebody could be using it maliciously and leaking that data, which you don't want to happen. So Phala Network has a private compute environment that allows the data to not be exposed to the people processing that data. So you don't need to worry about your data being leaked because you're using the Acala network. So Acala is pretty interesting if you want to loan some of your extra compute powers out there to make some extra cash on the side. So I'm gonna move on to the next parachain, which is the Shiden network, right? So Shiden, it's called Astar on Polkadot. And it's another Ethereum clone, basically. It uses the Ethereum virtual machine, but it also has the WASM, WebAssembly module, WASM, available as well. So WASM is a compute environment that executes arbitrary binary code, right? So if you write your code in Rust, you compile it to binary, then run it as a WASM file inside of this environment. So you don't need to be writing in Solidity. You could write in Rust for your smart contracts as well. But yeah, it's just another general compute environment, and it's actually really easy to deploy your own dApp right here, right? You just go to dApp, create your dApp, you upload your files, name it, deposit some SDN, some of their native token, right? And you can see over here in the store some of the dApps that other people have deployed already. You can actually, now if you're feeling generous, what you can do is you can stake your SDN tokens with some of these dApps being developed. So you get your tokens back eventually, but you stake your tokens with them, and then those projects can earn interest on your staked tokens. So you're essentially paying that development team to keep developing that app. So that's pretty interesting. dApp staking, I can't think of, I've seen that in any other network. So here's an example. There's not many dApps on here yet, but like one example is Deep Waifu. Mint your perfect AI generated girlfriend on the blockchain today. Okay, that's interesting. I don't know how far down this rabbit hole we're going to go today, but yeah, so you kind of get the idea right there. Moving on to Parachain number 5 is Bifrost. So this was the final project that won the first round of auctions on Kusama. Honestly, it's not really that useful. Let's see. The website does a pretty terrible job of explaining anything that it's going to do. You know, over 30% circulation BNC, high profit. Mint via KSM for triple airdrop. Basically, I think what they're doing is they're doing the same thing that Karura is already doing, which is they have the liquid staking. You're going to be seeing a lot of that in these projects. They just seem to be super excited about liquid staking or liquid crowd loans or whatever, but like I'm not really that excited about Bifrost. They only just launched their token about 2 days ago, finally. Even though they won the network months ago. So on a more exciting note, let's move on to the round 2 crowd loan winners for the Kusama Parachains. Okay, so the first winner was the KILT Spirit Net. So I'm a little salty because I missed out on this crowd loan because it hit its cap too fast. But let me explain what KILT is, essentially. Let me draw another picture. Okay, so I want to make a claim. My claim is that I am over 21 and of the legal drinking age, right? So I want to make that claim to the bouncer over here. But in order to do that, I need to prove to him that I'm over 21. So I am going to go to the DMV, which is going to issue me a credential, right? Like a driver's license. They're going to give that to me, which I can take with me, right? And I can take that driver's license to the bouncer at the bar, and I can show it to him, and he can verify that in fact I am over 21 because one, he can check to see that the credential I'm presenting him is legitimate, and then he can see, and then he sees that it's issued by the DMV, which is an entity that he trusts. So it's basically a way for people to prove real world things like who they are, they're over a certain age, maybe they have like maybe they've earned a certain certificate, for example. So that's pretty exciting, actually. I think there's going to be a lot of real world use cases for that outside of just, you know, more of these distributed finance stuff that has gotten a little too far into the weeds with all this distributed finance stuff in the crypto space. So I think that's going to have a lot of real world applications. I don't think they necessarily need their own parachain, even though they have their own parachain right now. They could have just launched as a dApp on a lot of other smart chains. The next one I want to talk about was Calamari, also known as Manta Network on Polkadot. There's not a lot of details on their website so far, but from what I can gather, they have 2 main applications, which is Mari Pay and Mari Swap, right? So Mari Pay lets you pay other people in crypto, and Mari Swap lets you swap assets like a distributed exchange. Which isn't, neither of those are particularly new to the crypto space, but what is interesting is that they both have privacy on them. Most blockchains operate as public blockchains, so that means anybody can read and write to them. So anybody could see what your account balance is, like how many coins you have in your account, and they could see when you're sending and receiving any currency. And nobody really wants that. Nobody wants you to see their bank account or to see their credit card history. So MariPay introduces a whole level of privacy for those applications, which is another thing that the SEC is honestly going to hate, because the government honestly hates privacy coins like Monero and stuff. They want to be able to see all your transactions, to see your balances, to see if you're skipping out on your taxes, right? They're not going to like this at all when they find out about it, which I don't think they've noticed yet. Next up, I want to talk about Basilisk, and it's which is called HydraDX on Polkadot. It's Basilisk on Kusama, HydraDX on Polkadot, and they're actually 2 very different applications. They're not just, Basilisk isn't the test version of Hydra. They're 2 different applications for 2 different purposes, which is pretty different compared to how all these other projects are using the 2 chains. So the main application for Basilisk is liquidity pool bootstrapping, right? So that's when you want to launch a new token in a fair way, right? So normally if you want to launch a new token, what you do is, like, say you have USDC as one token, and then million token as the other token that you're going to want to launch, right? And they're sitting in a pool together. And when they're sitting in a pool together, the price can't do anything but go up, right? Because you just launched this token. So nobody else can take more of that token from somewhere else and deposit it in. They have to, that price will just keep going up as more people deposit USDC in and take some of that token out. So liquidity bootstrapping is a way of launching new tokens in a more fair, less YOLO, insane kind of way. And the idea is that they will launch new tokens on Basilisk, and then they will take that liquidity generated there and then pump it over to HydraDX. Now HydraDX, that's where things get interesting. Now their website doesn't do a very good job of explaining how HydraDX works. So I'm gonna do another graph to explain it to you guys. They have what are called omni pools. So an omni pool can consist of more than just two assets, right? You could have KUSD, the stablecoin, Moonriver token, you could have DOT, and all of those, you can choose which ones, when you deposit to this liquidity pool, you can choose which one you want exposure to. You don't need exposure to the entire pool, right? And all of that is accomplished through their token called HDX, the Hydra token. So it allows you to earn yields in liquidity pools while being exposed to only the assets you want to be exposed to and not necessarily other assets. So in regular DeFi, you might have a pool that has Ethereum and Chainlink in it at the same time, right? So if you're depositing this pool, you're exposed to the price action of both of these. So if one of those tanks, you will lose a lot more money than you'd expect due to impermanent loss, right? Whereas with the omni pools, you can deposit to a pool and only have exposure to just Moonriver, for example, if you just wanted to. So that makes DeFi even more interesting than it already is. So I'm pretty excited about Hydra. Now let's next move on to the next one, which is Heiko Finance, also known as Parallel Finance. So Parallel Finance, similar to Karura and Bifrost, has more of the liquid staking things, more liquid staking available, and it goes way beyond that actually. So normally when you want to stake on KSM or Polkadot, what you need to do is you pick a validator, you stake your money with that validator, and if that validator misbehaves, right, you can lose some of your money that's staked. That process is called slashing. That's when a validator is penalized for misbehaving or being offline or something like that. So they have algorithmic staking for you. So you give your money to Parallel, then Parallel stakes it for the best returns automatically. You don't need to think about it. It also provides insurance for staking. So if like that one of the validators gets slashed, you don't got to worry about your money. And then you can use liquid staking to bypass the whole like 30 or 7 day waiting period to unlock your money. Then in addition to that, you can actually take out loans. Go over to, here we're on Parallel Heiko, which is like the test net, right? Go over to lend and borrow. So you have the money locked, it's bearing interest, and then you can take out loans against those locked assets. That just unlocks like a whole extra level of possibility in DeFi. They're similar to Hydra, they're also unveiling three-sided liquidity pools. So Parallel, it's not launched yet, but it sounds like some pretty amazing application. I should say that none of the projects that have launched in the second round of Kusama Parachain auctions, we don't know what the return on that is because none of their native tokens that you get in exchange for the loans are tradable yet, right? But once they are tradable, then you'll have like an idea of what the economic value was for that. Then let's go on to project number 10. It's called Altair or Centrifuge. And Altair and Centrifuge is another EVM chain that is running arbitrary dApps. But what I want to talk about is Tin Lake, which seems to be their main application right here. The way it works is, let's suppose you're a bank, and the bank has a portfolio of loans, right? You're loaning money to buy cars, right? You have $1 million loan portfolio right here. You've loaned it out to maybe 1,000 people to buy various cars, and you're getting your money paid back in every month with interest, right? So that's an income stream. So Tin Lake, what it lets these companies do is take those portfolio, break it up into an NFT, and then break that NFT down into tranches, right? So you have the high risk tranche, which gets the highest interest rate, and the low risk tranche, which gets the best interest rate, right? So if those car loans go bad, if people stop paying back for them, then what will happen is the high risk tranches, they lose their money first, then it goes down the level. So it's a way of banks taking their portfolios of assets and loans and selling it to people on the blockchain. And it's a way of people on blockchains to earn interest on the money that they have stored. And the SEC is absolutely going to hate this as well. This reminds me a lot of the home lending crisis that happened in 2008, where there's a bunch of securitized debt. We don't need to get into it all, but you get the idea. And Tinlake it's launching on Polkadot and on Kusama because it's a lot cheaper for transaction fees, but it's actually already on Ethereum and it's already live. So you can actually go to Tinlake and you can see, right here, here's a branch Series 3 from this factory, emerging market consumer loans, for example. The next one I want to talk about was Kintsugi. So Kintsugi, it's pretty easy to understand. If you have native Bitcoin, you can lock your native Bitcoin and then use that to mint a virtual Bitcoin on the Polkadot or Kusama network. So it's a way of creating like a wrapped Bitcoin without like a central authority. Wrapped Bitcoin is created by a central authority. So it's similar to RenVM. If you guys are familiar with that project at all, it's just a way of porting Bitcoin from native blockchain to the Polkadot and Kusama blockchains. So that project managed to sneak in on the 11th Parachain auction. So that's it. Those are all the current parachains that are currently operating on Kusama. But I want to make some honorable mentions to a few other ones. So Clover Finance is going to be launching on the Polkadot Parachain. So Clover Finance, it's a pretty big project, and it's actually already live on Coinbase. You can just go onto Coinbase and buy some of its token already. So I think this is the first project that's already like available on Coinbase. But basically, Clover is going to be a bridge between Polkadot, Phantom, Ethereum, Avalanche, all of them. And they've already got their own mobile wallet. They've already got their own browser extension. It's a pretty big project already. The other project that's launching on Polkadot is Latentry. So Latentry, it's an identity management platform similar to how KILT is going to work, like that we already talked about. So another project to look out for is Equilibrium, also known as Genshiro, on the Kusama network. And it's a lending platform that goes cross-chain, right? So if you have money on Ethereum, let's say, and you want to borrow against money on Binance Smart Chain, Genshiro enables those sort of transactions. Yeah, that's another project that I'm pretty excited about. They also have some pretty cool artwork on their website. I think it's pretty cute. So that was a huge ass tour of most of the projects on Polkadot and Kusama. So let me show you how to contribute to some of these crowd loans. So what you do right now is, let's go over to Kusama. So we're gonna go to Network, Parachains. I'm gonna click on Crowdloan over here. And so these are the projects that are currently up for auction. So if you want to contribute, you just push contribute over here. There's usually a minimum amount you can contribute. I'm guessing it's going to be like $1 or something when these projects actually launch. So you can push contribute. You're going to put in your password and sign this transaction, and then your balance should go up right here. You can see my balance was 0.4, now it's 0.5. So a more interesting way, instead of, if you guys don't want to use this interface, you can just go directly to the project's homepage, right? And you can see right here, it's like, okay, you want to participate in this crowd loan. Okay, cool. Let's click on that. I'm going to participate with Kusama, KSM. I'm going to connect my wallet, contribute 0.1 KSM. And you can see these are the rewards I'm going to get. I'm going to get about 4,000 Pika in exchange. And you see they'll have other like gimmicks like referral codes and that you can generate for extra returns. Okay, I'm going to sign that transaction. And then that transaction will submit. And then if we go over here, you'll see that this amount already went up. It went from 0.5 to 0.6. So that's how much I've locked with this crowd loan, which I'll get back in about a year. I should also point out that if you contribute to a crowd loan for a project and that project doesn't end up winning in one of these rounds, the money that you contributed will be refunded back to you at the end of the crowd loan round. So you're not like putting anything at risk, really. You're not going to lose any of your tokens by contributing to these crowd loans. That's everything you guys need to know about these crowd loans. And I will see you guys later in the next video. Thanks for sticking through this and watching this. I know this was a pretty long video. My next video will be a lot shorter. See you guys.